Hi, thank you. Thanks for inviting me to this session. And I'm not quite sure how I can follow on from such an amazing session earlier on Tai Chi,
Yeah.
but I will do my best. Thank you for the introduction, Ellie. My name's Kate Hall. I'm a dietitian based in Berkshire. Just to give a bit of context, I have two boys, two dogs. Hopefully this afternoon session will maybe provide you with some new tips or reassuring some of those tips that you might already be following. So please do ask any questions in chat, and there is time for Q&A, and some of the tips as well I can send a link around so that it's not all about listening and trying to frantically note down any of the tips. There will be information about this afterwards as well for you. Healthy eating. Healthy eating is something that in an ideal world that we are all following. It's good for all of our health. And as it's important to look after ourselves as well, as supporting those who we love and care for. And what is healthy eating? Everything in moderation. But I'm sure that many of you have seen or maybe heard of the Eating Well guide, which is literally just a very pictorial plate. But what we need to make sure is that we're definitely having our breakfast. We're having something at lunchtime, and we're having something in the evening to eat. And to make sure that we're getting a balance of the different foods as well throughout the day. And what should our plate look like? We need to make sure that we're getting enough fruit and vegetables. So if you think of a plate, I was going to try and bring in a plate, but I completely failed. But if you think of your plate, and half of your plate should be vegetables, if you're thinking of your lunchtime, which is coming up soon, a mix of different vegetables, and then a quarter of your plate to be the starchy food, the food that gives us some energy. So like potatoes or rice or pasta, couscous, bread, or cereal, as it would be maybe in the morning for breakfast. And then the other part, the other quarter, to be the protein containing food, which helps give us our strength and build our muscles. So depending on what your dietary preferences are, that might be beans, pulses, or it might be meat, fish. It depends what your own preferences are. What I'm going to go through today is to sort of some tips really around how to save money when shopping, and how to try to achieve eating this mystical 5 fruit and vegetables a day on a budget, and hopefully give you some tips, and also around sort of reading label, freezing, and then some meal ideas as well. So it's a lot to cover, but I'm happy for it to be interactive as well. But hopefully, as I said before, it'll give you some hints and some tips. We all know that every time we go to the supermarket, it almost seems we're buying the same foods, but the cost just keeps on going up every single week. So some things which I hope might be helpful if you're thinking about, your shopping, whether you're shopping on a weekly basis or a monthly basis. Most important thing is if you're able to find the time around meal planning, even if it's a guide of the kind of meals or foods that you want to or you plan to have at each of your meals, that will help to sort of curb perhaps the impulse buying when shopping, which is quite easy to do when you're short of time and you just need to get the things that you need to get. So it's about planning, making a meal plan, and writing that list, and also taking the time if possible to check and see what's already in the cupboard or in the fridge or in the freezer, so that I don't know, I have this imaginary thing of thinking that we never have enough pasta, so I have a pasta mountain. But it's to make sure that you're not overbuying as well, so you're only buying what you need. Some people find that if they shop with somebody else, they can make the most of the bulk buys, or if you team up with other people to make the most of the bulk buy. So you're still just buying what you need, but you're taking advantage of those offers. And select a time that you've got to shop so that you don't feel like you're rushing. So if that is possible, or shopping online, of course, which there's two options where you can click and collect, or it gets delivered to your house. But equally, when you're shopping online, is taking the time, because I don't know how it's like for you, but sometimes it's quite confusing trying to find an item of food that you only bought last week online, and they seem it's quite hard to find because the name has changed, or you can only get one brand up and you know that they've got others. So take the time so that you can order again only what you need online. If you are shopping, whether it's virtual shopping or it's physical shopping, try to avoid shopping on an empty stomach. That is the tempting time when you see special offers, or you just end up potentially buying things that you didn't mean to, because if you're hungry when you're shopping, you perhaps can't think straight, and you just want to get things done really, really quickly because you're starving hungry, so therefore it can affect what you buy. Sometimes the special offers aren't always as good as they may seem, particularly if you might be tempted to buy more than you need and it's a fresh item. The risk there is that it ends up perhaps you're not able to use it before the use by date. And another tip is, depending on where you shop, if you haven't or you don't know already, is ask a member of staff at what time of day or which days they tend to have sort of the fresh food reduction times, because you sometimes get to know the time of day to perhaps pop into the shop because they have the fresh items that are reduced. So whether that's bakery, or it might be fruit and vegetables, or fridged items that then need to be used by within a couple of days, so they tend to reduce them. So that's another tip, because some of those foods, particularly if it's meat, could also be frozen. And value brands, so the supermarket's own, or even their own value brands, can often taste just as good, but significantly less. And also local food markets, particularly sort of the fresh fruit and vegetables, they can be cheaper buying it that way. Plus you still have the hands-on, you can see what the fruit is and vegetables are like than in the supermarkets. And when you go shopping, the other thing is, when you look, that's the other point about, if you can make the time to go shopping, if you're physically shopping, is at eye level, it's very clever the way that they shelve the food. So at eye level, that's what you see first, so that's what you might pick out. Whereas if you were able to sort of look at the bottom as well as the top, you might find a similar product, but it's actually at a lower price. So do have a look up and down, because it might be that there might be same item but significantly less, but just on a lower shelf or a higher shelf. It depends on the marketing strategy of the supermarket. And sometimes, not always, maybe the larger supermarkets have a broader range of produce, but if you're shopping online, it's you get a bigger range anyway with shopping online from the supermarkets. And if you're buying store food items or store cupboard items like pasta or rice or breakfast cereals, tinned tomatoes, then if there are special deals on, because their shelf life is so much longer, that's the time to maybe bulk buy, if you are able to bulk buy some of those products, so you've got them in the store cupboard. It's just then remembering when you do go shopping that you have got those extra products in the store cupboard. So hopefully that gives a multitude of different different tips from how to save money when you're actually physically shopping. But when it comes to fruit and vegetables, we're now entering into, I don't know, I hasten to say whether we're entering into summer, but spring/summer, where it's kind of a bit warmer, although this morning it certainly wasn't, and last night. But you're starting to see a bigger range of seasonal fruit and vegetables coming into the supermarkets. And those are the better ones to go for, the seasonal fruit and vegetables, because they'll be a more reasonable price than, say, those that are out of season, because naturally they have to be sourced from perhaps other countries, so they're going to be a little bit more. It's making the most of those seasonal fruits and vegetables, and choosing the loose products where you can rather than the package, because sometimes, I'm not saying always, but sometimes they can be often cheaper to buy them loose than pre-packaged. And some supermarkets have wonky fruit and vegetables, which are just as nutritious, but they're just not the expected shape. So if the supermarkets do have those, again, those can be a better value, but you're not losing out on the taste or the freshness of those products. And tinned fruit and tinned fruit and vegetables, if you've got the tinned fruit in their own juice, again, they're just as nutritious as the fresh fruit, and they can be useful for all kinds of puddings, desserts, just fresh fruit with a little bit of yogurt, or even with your cereal. So they're quick and easy options, and because they're in the cupboard, you're not having to it doesn't matter if you buy it and then don't use it for a few weeks. And frozen fruit and vegetables as well, they're good value, and again, they're frozen just after being picked, so nutritionally, again, they're a very good option. And it means that you can have products that are sort of out of season but just as tasty. And also, if you think about dried fruit, a small kind of hand cup full, which is about 30 grams of dried fruit, can be added just to cereals or to salads, and again, that's another way to get one of your fruit and vegetable a day. And something that somebody told me, and I some of you might have this locally to you, but by visiting a local allotment or community garden, sometimes they have cheap fruits and vegetables. Now, I know that's not for everyone, but you may well be living in an area that is somewhere that you can go as well. So there are different ways. When we say about having 5 fruit and vegetables a day, sometimes that can be quite daunting. But if you think about the different presentations of fruit and vegetable that you can get, so the tinned, the frozen, as well as the fresh, and the fact of going for seasonal, there are ways to be able to achieve that. And something that can be quite daunting is when you're looking at a label and you're trying to work out what is the price and is that healthy. When looking at the pricing, again, that can be very confusing, but some supermarkets are quite good in putting how much the price is per 100 gram or whatever, so you can sometimes do a price comparison. So it's trying to not get confused too much by that, but that can be a guide. So if, for example, you've got chicken and you've got a small pack of chicken and then you've got a bigger pack of chicken, if you look at the price per kilo, that'll give you a better idea of which one is the better value to buy. Because when they put special offers on and everything else, it can get far too confusing. So for meat in particular, it's sometimes better to look at the price comparison of the price per kilo. And then any questions before I moved on, actually, rather than sort of talking talking at you kind of for the full session, before we come on to cooking tips and reducing food waste and about freezing? Are there any questions at this point? I've seen some things come through on chat, but
Kate, this is Ellie. Thank you so much for touching base already, and highlighting how caring can be draining, and speaking about how we can maximize energy, proteins intake, and tips on getting best products and best value. And we have several comments at the chat. One of them from Valerie reads, celiacs needing free from are at a huge disadvantage in terms of both cost and choice, especially if they can't go out shopping as they are carrying. And I would like to thank Valerie for raising that and bringing it into our attention. Any immediate questions for Kate?
Just one. Well, round here, I found the cheaper tends to have a lot more water with regards to chicken. Is that the same everywhere, whether it's been frozen or not?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it does. It depends where. I mean, where some farm shops. So think if you're lucky enough to have a farm shop near you, they're very good. They can be very good value for for the meat that you buy, because they I know what you mean. Sometimes when you put the chicken, or you cut up the chicken, and then all of a sudden half of it's disappeared, or it looks like half of it's disappeared when you've cooked it, and that's just for the nature of the way that it needs to be packaged and everything else. I couldn't comment on certain on different brands, but I know that people find that if you're buying direct from butchers, or from from farm shops, sometimes they find that there's less water coming from those meats, but I think it does depend. But if you marinate the chicken, I'm just using chicken example because you mentioned chicken, but if you marinate it, whether it be just in lemon juice or lime juice, or you could use a more fancy sort of marinade, then that can help as well reduce sort of the reduction of the meat when you cook it as well.
Thank you, Kate.
And helps keep it tender as well when you're cooking it.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you, Michael, also for the question. I know that, Terry, you've raised your hand, so feel free to unmute yourself.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Just a quick question. My 95-year-old father, it's impossible to try and get him to eat 5 portions of fruit and veg a day. Have you got any advice on how I can get that into his diet? I'm afraid he's sort of quite old-fashioned and views, anything with an onion in it is foreign food. He won't eat it. So any suggestions?
So does he like stewed apple, that kind of?
Yeah.
So stewed apple and custard. I mean, fruit crumbles, I was going to come on to when I do the menu ideas. But frozen fruits, so frozen red fruit, you can buy it's just the general basic bargain, not bargain, but whatever, value, mixed red fruit.
Okay.
If you put that in the bottom, let it defrost a little bit, because then it's much more squidgy when you cook it with the crumble on the top. But putting that in and then putting the crumble on and cooking that's really nice, and it's quite tasty. But then that's another way, to get your fruit in is having it that way, especially if you make sure that there's a generous proportion of the fruit in the crumble to crumble. But yeah, stewed apple. Does he? It depends what kind of breakfast he has, but whether there's an opportunity to add any fruit or dried fruit, depending if it's having cereal, if it's having toast, maybe banana on the toast, or with like smoothies. I don't know, they like smooth, no. But but tinned fruit, like tinned peaches, tinned pears, in their own juice, if you get them in their own juice, and so that either on its own or with some creme fraiche, or with a tiny little bit of ice cream if it's a pudding, then that's another way to get the fruit in. And vegetable wise, when we come on to meals, but if you like soups, then that's also a good way to get a variety of different vegetables in, with either, if you want it to be a smooth one, depends if he's able to, you know, eat soup with lumps in, or puree, or you can puree it, and then that's again, it's just another good way to get some vegetables into the diet, as well.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you very much.
That's all right.
Fantastic. Yep. Thank you so much, Terry, for your question, and Kate for responding it. If there aren't any immediate questions, I'll pass it over back to Kate to continue.
Thank you. And thanks for the questions. It's nice to be able to break it up as well. So thinking about, we're all very conscious around food waste as well. There was something I was listening to this morning that was talking about just how much waste, particularly in households, that we, and I'm sure we are guilty here, me myself, that you buy foods and then when you're going through the fridge, you think, oh my goodness, that's looking a bit old. And the amount of food waste has gone up over the past few years. So thinking about some cooking tips and reducing food waste as well, so that what you're buying, you are using. Cooking from scratch can be good value, and it can be fun. And some of the tips that I noted down, I'm just looking over in this direction because I've noted down some tips to remind me so I don't forget any, is why not, you know, make your own favorite takeaway at home, such as curry and rice, or stir fry with noodles. So they're quick and easy, but also it's quite a good way if you've got a few vegetables that are looking a bit worse for wear, of cutting them up, and then they're flavored by the sauce that you use for the stir fry, for example. And again, curry, you can, and I'm not a curry connoisseur, so forgive me if I'm saying the wrong thing, but from a curry perspective, you could just chuck in some foods that you've realized in the fridge are near their use by date and need to be cooked and need to be eaten, and you could cook it up and into a curry. And then if you've got any leftover curry, you can freeze it as well, so it's not wasted. I mentioned before, so thank you for the question earlier, around homemade soups. Again, any leftover vegetables or other piece of meat that are still in date, but you're not sure what's using for, you can make them into soups. And again, if there's leftover soup, then you can freeze it. So, you know, sort of a bit of batch cooking, and then freeze in portions so that you can just get it out of the freezer in the morning for later on in the day, or the night before, put it in the fridge so you can have it at lunchtime the next day. And where you can and where it makes sense to ensure getting fibre in your diet, which is good for us, is leaving the skins on the fruit and vegetables where it makes sense. And if peeling is required, then sometimes some peelings could be added to recipes like soups or stews. If you have any dogs, carrot peeling, they love. I know that from experience. And whenever I get a carrot out of the fridge, they always think the carrot is for them. So they're a bit grumpy when they realise it's been grated, especially if we haven't peeled it, because it's clean enough to be washed and used. So, you know, the peelings could also be used, or even thinking of like orange peeling and lemons. If you haven't used the you know, if you haven't needed to grate it for the recipe, the skin, but you need to peel it, you could actually, as long as it's been washed, it can be used in just helping to flavour a sauce as well. you could reduce meat portions, and so have less if you do eat meat, but you could eat slightly less meat and bulk out with pulses or say chickpeas, so that, you know, because meat can sometimes be quite expensive, but you still want the flavor if you like meat, but you could just have a little bit less and bulk it out. And other good value protein sources like baked beans. I mean, baked beans on toast, especially it's wholemeal toast, is a fantastic meal. Tinned mixed beans, tinned chickpeas, lentils, and other meat substitutes, like you can get corn, but it's not just corn. There are other alternatives, you know, to meat alternatives. Supermarkets do their own versions as well. Milk, it's also a good source of protein. Yogurt, hummus, because that's got chickpeas in. Eggs, frozen chicken thighs, again, they can be useful to have in the freezer to make casseroles and so on with. Budget cuts of meat, or if you go at certain times of the day, sometimes you can get the reduced fresh meat in the fridge, and you can just freeze it for later if you don't need to use it, want to use it straight away. And tinned fish, thinking of sardines and mackerels, if you like those kinds of fish, they're just as good if you get the tinned. And frozen fish. And there's a lot more variety now that you can get in the freezer of frozen fish. And they tend to be better value. And also from a stock control perspective or portion control, it can be easier because you're not having to remember, oh my goodness, I've got the fish in the fridge and oh, it's out of date. So if you've got it in the freezer, don't forget it's in the freezer, but you know, you can then get it out when you need it or want to use it. Preparing packed lunch, so for example, using the leftovers from the night before, have that as your lunch, or putting it in a sandwich depending on what that food is. Having a stock of herbs and spices, so that can be added as flavor to meals and side dishes. And you can get, obviously you can get dried, you can get fresh, or you can get dried, but you can get frozen, the frozen herbs. Now most supermarkets do them. You can get quite a variety of different herbs frozen. And again, they're useful because they last a long time in the freezer. The dried herbs do last a long time, but I'm still amazed as to how sometimes I go in the cupboard and it's out of date. So it's just a case of, you know, do keep an eye on the dates on those. Bread and other perishables, don't forget that they can be frozen as well. So it's trying to freeze it as close to when you buy it or have made it, so that it's fresher when it's frozen. And thinking about bulk or batch cooking, like I mentioned earlier, batch cooking, if you're making a shepherd's pie, apologies for those who don't like shepherd's pie, but just using that as an example, it could be macaroni cheese, it could be curry. If you're making a largish portion, is then siphon out the portions that you're not going to use that day and make individual portions, just thinking about the people who you are feeding, so to speak, because some people might need slightly smaller portions, some people might need slightly bigger portions. So if you've got those in the freezer, then you can then use those in later days, and you've automatically got a meal. Or you just need to cook the rice and, you know, add the curry from the freezer once it's defrosted and cooked to it. So those are just some tips. I was just seeing it's 12:30 already. But from a freezing perspective, if you have got a freezer, or even if you haven't got a freezer, but the top part of the fridge, it's freezing the food. You use those to your advantage. So if it's helpful to have, you know, some meals in the freezer ready for a rainy day, then do that, because it is tiring. You know, some days I'm sure you're more tired and shattered than others, but it's important to look after yourself as well and make sure you're getting the right nutrition and that you're not skipping meals. So having sort of something that's quick and easy but nutritious that perhaps you've cooked a few days before and it's in the freezer to be able to get out is really going to be helpful. I won't go through. I'll send a link because it's 12:30. I'll send a link to the tips around about freezing foods. It's just more around health and safety as well, making sure that, you know, when you do get foods out of the freezer, make sure that it goes on a plate or in a box and you store it in the fridge until it's fully defrosted. And then if it needs cooking, that it's cooked properly. And I've also got some ideas, budget meal ideas as well for breakfast, for lunch, an evening meal, and some pudding ideas that are easy to do, but does give a bit of variety and helps to incorporate the 5 a day philosophy of the fruit and vegetables, like some of the tips I mentioned earlier around the frozen fruit. But if you like eat and mess, quick tip of, you like the frozen red fruit, defrost that, whiz it, and then have that even just with a nice bit of just vanilla ice cream as a pudding, or with a meringue with a little bit of creme fraiche, and you've got an instant amazing refreshing pudding, and you've got one of your 5 a day as well.